Hi there, I'm your host, Mr. Doyle, and this is A Great Undertaking. This series is all about Stephen King's short story collection Night Shift, and this particular video is about the 1997 made-for-TV movie Trucks, based on a story of the same name, which, this movie. This is one of those movies that begs the question, why? Just why? There was already a so bad it's good movie version of this short story. The world didn't need an even worse, so bad it's terribly painfully bad version too. History and background. This movie was directed by someone no one has ever heard of before, and also the screenplay was written by someone equally unknown. Their names don't matter, and from what I can tell, this movie ended both of their careers. Rightfully so. Details on the production are scarce, but principal photography concluded on August 22nd of 1997, and shooting took place in Gunton and Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Outside of predominantly negative scores on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, where the movie scores a 3.9 out of 10 and a 31% respectively, I could only find one review from the time of release. TV Guide rated Trucks 2 out of 4 stars and wrote, quote, "The film is all premise and no plot, a problem made worse by the clumsy addition of extraneous gory sequences," unquote, which, I mean, the gory scenes were hardly the main issue, since there was maybe one gory scene in the whole movie. There are, however, plenty of reasons to dislike this movie. Is it by the book? No, not at all. Outside of the sentient trucks thing, this adaptation doesn't adhere to the short story in the slightest. There isn't a single character from the book, the location is different, and nearly every detail is altered. For those of you who aren't familiar with the short story, here is a brief summary. A ragtag group find themselves inexplicably surrounded by sentient trucks at a remote truck stop. As the trucks grow in number, they are joined by other varieties of vehicles, and the group of survivors strategize ways to escape. But they soon discover that they are vastly outnumbered. The trucks lead them to believe that they may be allowed to continue living, but at what cost? I don't want to spend too much time dissecting this story because I already wasted an hour and 45 minutes of my life watching it, and now I'm making a video about it, which has caused me to rethink some of my life's choices. Rather, I want to point out what I believe to be this movie's major flaw. In the short story, trucks both big and small, and some similar heavy-duty vehicles like buses and construction vehicles come to life. And in Maximum Overdrive, it's pretty much anything that runs on gas or electricity. But in this movie, it's just gas-powered trucks, except for when it isn't, and for some reason it includes battery-powered toy trucks as well. There's a completely unnecessary scene in this movie in which a mailman gets murdered by a remote-controlled Tonka truck, which, first of all, it's a shin-high piece of plastic. It's entirely ridiculous. The toy truck manages to knock the mailman to the ground and then slams into his face over and over and over. The entire scene is completely inconsequential and doesn't matter at all. But the real issue is that it's not played for laughs. It's supposed to be serious. And that is where this movie fails, where Maximum Overdrive succeeded. This movie takes itself seriously. Nothing is for the lulz, as opposed to Maximum Overdrive, where there was an obvious awareness that the premise was entirely silly. So they ran with that vibe, which made it a little easier to watch. The tone is all wrong in Trucks. I'm not saying that it's not possible to make a decent movie with a serious tone based on the premise of trucks having a mind of their own, but this movie tries and fails to deliver. Soundtrack and score. I'm pretty sure that every Night Shift screen adaptation just uses the same music, aside from Maximum Overdrive. It's also boilerplate and uninspired that it's interchangeable from one movie to the next. Droning strings, check. Timpani blasts, check. Shrieking violins, check. They really beat this formula to death. Cast and acting. Lead actress Brenda Bake delivers an entirely one-dimensional performance. At the start of the film, she is pleasant and mellow, but after all the chaos starts, she pretty much just stays that way. At one point, after nearly being smeared by a semi, she's asked if she's all right, and her response is, "I'm scared to death." Totally emotionless and devoid of feeling. Prior to this movie, she was in Hot Shots, gross. Hot Shots Part 2, and a Tales from the Crypt movie, Demon Knight, and she was great in both of those movies. Side note, if you haven't seen Demon Knight, you should watch it. I haven't seen it in a decade or so, but I remember it being quite enjoyable. Lead actor Timothy Busfield is a decent actor. He delivers a solid enough performance, but it's not enough to save this movie. Busfield did go on to have a career as an actor and a director, but the majority of his output has been relatively obscure. He is the founder of a nonprofit children's theater called Fantasy Theater for Children and B Street Theater, so that's admirable. The rest of the cast is underwhelming at best and ranges from mediocre to inept in skill. Special effects. Like Maximum Overdrive, this movie has its share of explosions and trucks plowing through buildings, but there are a few select scenes in which the special effects are just absurd in every way. In one scene, a chemical spill cleanup truck blows up a hazmat suit, like inflates it, with an air compressor, and then the truck uses the inflated hazmat suit to axe the cleanup crew to death. Like it's still connected to the truck's like vacuum blower tube or something. It was just an incredibly stupid idea. And also it's very clearly a person in a hazmat suit and not some inflated suit. But anyway, there's another scene in which an electrical worker is up in a cherry picker when his truck comes to life and makes him electrocute itself. Not only are the effects bad, but like the mailman being toy trucked to death in the face, it's just a pointless scene that has no bearing on the story whatsoever. Final thoughts. Why did this happen? Who thought this was a good idea? If you're going to remake a bad movie, the point should be to make it better than the original, not worse. What was the point of this, and who is responsible? Someone needs to be brought to account and made an example of. Okay, goodbye. Be sure to click like and subscribe to the channel for my continued analysis of all things Stephen King, pretty please with blood and guts on top. My name is Mr. Doyle, and this has been a great undertaking.